Welcome to another conversation with the Apostate Sisters. I'm Patty, and I make this podcast with my sister Nancy. We grew up in a doomsday cult called the Worldwide Church of God. We're also nerdy about history and culture, but we're critical of religion. So get ready to get mad or to nod your head in agreement as we blow design. Today, we've got science community up and why the youth of today need to know about it. Let's get started. Kids and how they learn has been a big deal to me for sure, because I have two kids, and Nancy as an auntie of two homeschooled kiddos. So Aron, we had this idea of having you come on the show and talk with us and with my 13-year-old kid Ivy here about all the times that God fucked up biologically. And it was a thing that she kind of thought of because she has a lot of examples of times that God fucked up that she likes to talk about.
Human needs.
So that's her favorite. But we kind of have some goals here today. We want to, of course, be educational about the evolutionary biology and stuff, and why we can show that the world and all that's in it isn't perfectly designed. But we want to show how thinking that it's perfectly designed actually undermines our progress and undermines the intelligence of these teenagers that are becoming adults now, and who are going to run the world in just a few years.
Especially when you consider that scripture tells you not to think.
Yeah.
It doesn't say
it just tells you to be stupid.
That. But you can't, how dare you, thou shalt not put the Lord your God to the test. Blessed is he who has not seen and yet believed.
Right.
That sounds like calling an idiot blessed.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yes. Right, but it's like glorifying being dumb about stuff.
Yeah, it's it's like totally believing. Trust me, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, well, every time somebody tells me that Jesus died for my sins or whatever it is that God wants or will do or forgives, everybody knows all these things about God, even though they can't say that they can't even show that he exists.
Mm-hmm.
And my response to that is, cool story, bro.
Right.
They're like, trust me, it's true.
Well, right. Oh,
yeah, that's the there we got snakes coming out already. Awesome.
Hello there. Who is this?
Is that an Argentine boa?
It is.
It's a baby. They get really big.
Yes.
Yeah,
8 or 9 feet long, but it'll be a long time before she gets there. Everything about a boa is slow.
Yeah, on Snake Discovery, they have 2 Argentine boas that had babies. I watched the video.
Oh, cool.
I think I saw that one too, where every one of those Argentines was $1,000 as babies.
Crazy.
These puppies,
they're super pretty though.
They are. They are.
I
hand selected this one. I had a whole brood or litter clutch, whatever, to select from, and she was the prettiest. I thought
they called them a clutter on Snake Discovery.
Instead of a clutch or a litter, a clutter.
Yeah.
Snake Discovery is actually in Minneapolis, correct? Or like it's somewhere in
we've been to the building.
Yeah, we've been there. It's really cool. So yeah, if you're going to be there for American Atheists.
I'm going to be in Minneapolis for AA NatCon.
Yep. Yeah.
And I'm trying to bring my reticulated python Jormungandr. So it would be a hoot to bring him into there.
But you're having a hard time getting authorization, correct?
I have to get permits from the state just to have him in the state.
Yep. Oh, just to have him in the state.
Oh, and is that because he's slightly venomous?
No, he's a reticulated python. He's not venomous.
Oh, not that. Why
are you thinking about the false water cobra?
Oh, yes.
I knew there was no way I was going to be able to bring her in, even though she's a peach and never hurt anybody.
Yeah.
They have false water cobras at Snake Discovery as well.
Yeah.
They have a lavender one.
Ooh.
Nice.
That's cool.
And tomato frogs, apparently.
Because what I read was that if it's venomous, it's off the chart. And also you can have a non-venomous snake less than 4 feet, and you cannot have a non-venomous snake longer than 4 feet. There's all these different rules. And my false water cobra is 6'6".
Oh, yeah.
She'll be 7 or 8 by the time she's mature. So I don't know what the laws seem to be contradicting what I'm reading, and I'm reading from the state.
That would never happen, Aron.
I know. Right hand not knowing what the left hand's doing. What?
You must be reading it wrong. You must be interpreting it incorrectly.
So I read these things that talk about how illegal everything is in Minnesota, and then I find out that there's a Minneapolis Herpetological Society. I'm like, how?
I mean, they even have mildly venomous snakes like native to Minnesota.
The hognose.
Yeah.
Yeah, hognose.
Because they're rear-fanged.
Yeah,
and it just makes your hands swell up if you let them chew on you.
Let them chew on you.
I appreciate. Are you a herp yourself? I mean, do you have?
I mean, my mom has a snake. I like snakes. I would have a pet snake, but we have cats and also not enough space to have a bunch of snakes.
Well, a bunch of snakes, but generally a snake is a whole lot easier to take care of.
Oh, python?
A snake is a whole lot easier to take care of than most mammals. I would go with a boa, actually.
Really?
Yes. I would go with a boa imperator. Well, if she was younger, I mean, she's 13. She's mostly grown.
Yeah.
But boa imperator. Well, I was just showing you the boas grow slow. So if you give a kid a boa, if you give a kid a colubrid, a baby colubrid, which is best to raise them yourself, if you give a kid a baby colubrid, that kid will lose that snake. A corn snake, for example, a baby corn snake, that child will lose that snake inside of 5 minutes.
Well, you were saying that if God's perfect design was perfect,
nothing would ever go extinct, obviously.
Well, let's look at that. See, God told Noah that, Noah was supposed to build this boat, and God is responsible for bringing all the animals to it. God says he will have all the animals come to Noah. Noah doesn't have to go look for them. They're going to come to him.
So we have evidence that Titanoboa and every extinct creature existed. We have solid evidence that they existed, but somehow they didn't survive the flood.
Yeah.
And they
died.
All of
these sauropods and
yeah, like just the idea that all creatures that exist now have just always existed in their current form forever is just so inherently stupid. In my
How about
opinion.
that they all ate vegetables?
Is that really the belief that there weren't carnivores?
The Earth creationists argue that Tyrannosaurus used those teeth for chewing on watermelons or whatever. They know that they're full of shit. I watched Ian Juby talk about the serrations on a Tyrannosaurus teeth, and he said just like a serrated edge steak knife, but he stopped himself midway through saying steak knife because he realized that that's for eating meat, and he's trying to promote the idea that Tyrannosaurs ate vegetables. And that's what Black Widow's venom is for. And now snakes are the only exception we can make out of that, because snake is the only other clade besides human that the Bible actually describes, right down to the first one. So Adam and Eve are the first couple. They are, and the Bible talks about the descendants of Adam, the descendants of man, and the descendants of Eve will bruise the head of the serpent. There will be enmity between the descendants of Eve and the descendants of the serpent. So we're definitely not talking about Satan here. We are talking about snakes, because God cursed the serpent to crawl on his belly all the rest of his days. So all of the descendants of the serpent, because why would he do that to innocent animals? If it cursed above all beasts. So we're talking about a snake, not a devil. The first time the devil comes up in the Bible, he's walking. It says he's walking.
Now you should know that this child has not been educated in the Bible.
I watched a YouTube video that was like a cartoon representation of the Bible, but like as mythology, on a channel that also did like Greek mythology and stuff.
I suggest
it was just Genesis, but
I suggest you look up the Brick Bible.
And I was just
Legos.
Okay. Yeah. But I was
the
like,
Bible is hilarious.
This thing contains so much like contradictions, and it's just it's not even it doesn't have a good plot. You see, I don't get it. The
Hebrew
plot
tradition
is all over the place, and it's like sort of following this like random bloodline, vaguely. but it's like the protagonist changes like at least 7 times, and it's just all over the place. And I'm like, why would you choose to live by this? And you said there was some passage in the Bible that was like, yeah, don't wear cloth that has mixed fibers. And I'm like, Christian, why are you nitpicking? Like, oh, if you choose that you should follow everything in this random ass book, follow it to the T. Yeah, don't half-ass your job.
Yeah, no
Wear your
nylon
cotton
polyester
shirts
vans.
and freeze to death in the winter, please.
I like to say that the Bible gets everything wrong, scientifically and historically, ethically and morally, because I can defend that.
And then also the fact that people will like twist the Bible in a way to benefit them, like also the fact that there's different versions of the Bible is so stupid. Like, if it was pure truth, there wouldn't be different versions. Like, just like that.
When they say version, they're talking about translation. And the translations are up to some subjective impressions. I work with a bunch of Bible scholars on a weekly Bible study, and they have their favorite versions that they think are the best translated, and they don't like the King James, which is the most popular. Yep. All the Southern Baptists love the King James Bible, and Bible scholars say it's one of the worst.
Yeah, I've heard
that. Imagine that.
Well, let's see. To turn the conversation back toward the biology of today, I was kind of wondering, like, you know, from Nancy and my perspective, we're talking about this like, okay, so if God supposedly made everything and it's all perfect and stuff, how did he screw it up so badly? And why does the messiness actually look more like these natural processes? So, Aron, if you could like kind of explain how what we see describes what is, we would love to hear that.
Well, let's look at why it is that in paleontology, and most people don't know this because most people are not paleontologists. Most people think that paleofauna, their knowledge of paleofauna is limited to a few plastic pieces in a prehistoric play set. That's what they think. They think there are like 32 different, Dimetrodons and Pteranodons and mammoths are all dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. And they don't know that there's all these interconnections. With Dimetrodons, that Dimetrodon represents one out of about a dozen similar sort of species. And mammoths, again, represents an entire order of proboscideans. There's several different types of mammoth, as well as mastodon, as well as loxodon, different types of elephants, including Paleoloxodon, which was the biggest of all of them ever, and probably might have been the biggest mammal. There's a contention between that and Paraceratherium. That's the giant hornless rhino that is it's so big that I can walk underneath it and reach up to touch its belly.
Wow.
Yeah,
I am sure glad humans didn't live with those guys.
Just enormously freaking huge. There was once a baboon, and if you've ever encountered a baboon in real life, you know what kind of nightmare fuel they are. Their body is as big as yours. So if a baboon were to sit down in your car seat, and I know somebody who had that experience, a baboon sat in a car seat next to her, and she was terrified because it was a wild baboon that opened her car door.
Those things are dangerous.
It opened her car door and sat in the passenger seat, looked at her in the eye, and then grabbed her lunch bag, opened the car door again, and got out to steal her lunch.
That's not stealing. I'm pretty sure that's robbery.
I think it's foraging, according to the animal.
Well, no, there's in the fossil record, there's Dinopithecus, which is basically a baboon, but substantially bigger than me.
Ugh.
Oh,
those things can already bite human bones in half.
Yeah. So yeah.
Really?
I encountered 2 baboons in the wild, and they are nightmare fuel. I just no.
It seems we gave up some of our strength for our enormous human brain power, huh?
Yeah. So the fossil record contains more genera than still exists today. And that's the thing that I like to show in my phylogeny videos. People don't realize, they think that there's a sparrow. They don't realize there's hundreds of species of sparrows and 2 different types of hundreds of species of sparrow, and that all of these are in subcategories of all these other things. And parrots, maybe you think that there's like 4 or 5 different kind of parents. No, there's like 350 different ones in all these different parent categories. So we know that they all had to be descending from. So Noah, at a minimum, he's going to have the progenitor of all the Amazon parrots, all the African parrots. He's going to have the cockatoos, the Australian parrots. He's going to have
ship is going to fit that shit.
And there's no reason to do it. When God fucked up, Noah's flood is the biggest example of that. God creates man.
Yep.
And then according to the fable, and we'll have to go into where the fable came from, if you like, later, but according to the fable, God laments that he did this. God, what is the word?
So he was wrong?
Yes. God made a mistake. And he was upset that he made humans. And that's why he had to wipe out everybody. He had, in the stupidest way imaginable, he wants to eliminate a handful of Semitic people in the Levant. And rather than just put a tactical nuke in that one particular area,
or he could just go, and everyone's gone. Like, why does he actually do something like Also, the
wiggle your nose.
Like, an all-good, all-powerful God could not exist with just everything that's happening nowadays. It's literally not possible.
Yeah, exactly. I've often said that if there was a God, then we wouldn't be in this situation.
Like, God is just playing with little dolls.
Not a God who actually cares.
Box.
Yeah. Right.
I think that a lot of people who believe in God make believe in God.
Yeah.
And they believe in belief. A few people have admitted to me that they know it's not really true, but they believe it anyway. So here's the thing about judgment, about Christianity in particular, and Islam as well. They both parrot the same idea, which they did not get from Judaism. Christianity and Islam. Well, Islam got the idea from Christianity. Christianity got the idea from Zoroastrians, which predate Judaism, rabbinic Judaism anyway. So you go back to around the 6th century BC, and you've got Zarathustra and the worship of Ahura Mazda. And it is from the Avestas of Zarathustra that we hear the story that the good man will, upon his death, rise to the kingdom of justice and truth under the wise Lord Ahura Mazda. But the wicked man will descend into the kingdom of the lie, ruled by Ahriman the opposer. And there's a word that means the opposer or the enemy, and it's called Ha-Satan.
Oh, Satan? Oh, wow.
Ha-Satan meaning the Satan. So that's where they got the idea. So Jews don't really have that same concept. I mean, they've sort of like absorbed it from Christianity over the centuries since.
Yeah.
But rabbinic Judaism didn't really have this concept of damnation. There was just the thing about you either live after you die or you don't. The wages of sin is death. And then Christianity changed that so that everybody lives forever. It's just whether you're going to be mercilessly and savagely, vindictively tortured forever and ever and ever by
okay, but God, doesn't God love us? That sounds like a toxic relationship.
And an abusive one. You're nothing without me.
That's terrible. That's terrible.
Yeah. So with the thing about the flood, God admits, and it's not the only time he did this, God admits a mistake that he made. And so he laments that he created humans in the first place, and now he's going to kill them all. It could be, and if he was a wise, loving father, if he was any of the things that people tell us that God is, then he would have parental wisdom. You know, he would come down like all the family sitcoms of the 60s and 70s, where the father was a wise one. Not in the 70s or 80s, because shit got weird after that. But in the 60s and 70s, the father was the wise one of the family, and he always had the words of wisdom. So that's what God would have done to aid these people in what they were doing that was pissing him off.
Right.
Water go.
No, but instead he's got to flood the entire world, killing everything. every doe in South America, every penguin in Australia, in Antarctica, everybody everywhere are going to kill everything.
So he
in the most
realized
impossible way. And if there was a global flood,
Also,
we
if they
wouldn't even
got
have soil horizons. The world would not recover from that.
if they got 2 of every
Oh.
creature, then everything would be very inbred. That would be a genetic bottleneck.
Let's say
Holy
you've got
crap.
2 of every creature. You got 2 lions and 2 gazelles.
What did they feed the lions?
And you've had them on here for a year. I don't think you've got 2 gazelles anymore.
Yeah.
But then what happens when you open the door and let them all out?
Then there's just going to be a little puddle of creatures in one place. And, like, how are they going to spread out again?
All these animals that you just saved, well, they're lion poop now.
And also, every other big cat or, like, apex predator creature is going to fight to the death over the limited food supply.
Let's not even talk about the tyrannosaurs and the allosaurs.
Oh,
that,
yeah. Oh my
that
gosh.
apparently aren't real to some Christians.
Or
The
existed
sad
at the
thing
same
is-
time as humans.
These people are
Yes.
conditioned, mentally conditioned.
Because if
that you
humans were
have to-
first, then if
you
humans
have
were
to
first,
believe the fable or else. Because damnation does not occur because of what you've done. All sins may be forgiven if you but believe. But if you don't believe, then it doesn't matter how good you are, because the only sin that will not be forgiven is the sin of disbelief. Gullibility is the sole criteria for redemption.
Ooh.
That's putting a point on it there, my friend.
So with the animals, why is it that we have these fantastic, wonderful life forms more so than we have today?
Yeah.
We have so many more things than are alive now. What is alive now represents only about 1% of everything that has ever lived, according to the fossil record. And look at that, how stunning most of these things were. When I mentioned that there were elephants that were bigger, there was a whole lot more of them, various different types, Tetralophodon and Stegodon, and there's ones that had shovel tusks, the big broad flat incisors that would shovel, and then an extra set of tusks over here. There was a whole bunch of really, really weird ones, and the entirety of taxonomy is just riddled with all these different species that are what we have now is just, as I said, it's just a tiny fraction of what there once was. And we remark about how many animals we have.
Yeah.
Just think about how many we used to have. What the hell's up with extinction? What happened to all the hyenodons, for example? Where'd they go?
I mean, the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs also killed, like, so much of everything else, too.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. The most dangerous ocean predator was mosasaurs, which is a literal lizard. It's not a dinosaur, it's actually a lizard, the largest lizard that ever lived. And they were fully marine, so their hands had turned into flippers, and they had to live in the sea. This was an animal that could no longer come out and sun itself on the beach.
Oh,
They were
so
also
is that like whales? Like, because whales were water, then land, and then they went back to water? Is it the same way?
yeah, and then it was pretty soon that the whales couldn't come back on the beach either.
Okay.
Oh,
So
yeah.
there's what happened with whales is that at some point in their evolution, their pelvises detached from the spine. And I can't remember. Georgia cetus is one of these, but there's a handful of whales that they can still use their flippers, maybe to sit still on the bottom, if they wanted to do that. But they can't. They could only drag them. If they got out of water, they could only drag themselves with their front flippers. The back flippers were useless. Can't support their body weight at all. So here we have an animal that has a pelvis and has hind legs. The legs are sticking out, but they can't do anything. Now, the definition of a vestigial feature is not that it is utterly useless. It is that it is diminished from its original function. Now, if you're looking at a leg, we've got a complete leg and a pelvis, but it's no longer capable of being a leg. That is a vestige. And it usually means reduced in size too, but not necessarily so. Snakes, same thing. We have fossil snakes that have hind legs. not the front legs. We don't have a fossil of a four-legged snake, but we do have fossils of hind-legged snakes.
Mhm.
And the hind legs that they have, although they are complete, they've got the thigh, they've got the lower leg, they've got the feet, they've got the toes. They're tiny. The legs are so laughably small.
Dangling.
Mhm.
Yes, they're full-on legs, but they're so laughably small they can't do anything except drag by the side.
There's
Or
legless
get
lizards
snagged
too,
on
right?
stuff. Which is
Exactly.
why they continued to evolve them away.
So the modern
So you're
snake,
saying that wasn't perfect design.
yeah,
Nope.
boas and pythons, especially pythons. I'm not even sure about boas. I'll have to go back and check, but I know that pythons have claws. So the last remnant of
Yeah,
their
I've seen
hind leg,
pictures of that.
they do have a thigh bone, and they have these little vestigial claws which can move, and they can use those claws when mating. And it's interesting. They use it to stimulate the female as well as to hang on to her and stuff. So we're thinking that the reason that some snakes maintained hind legs where they lost their front legs was the front legs didn't have any value at all. At least the hind legs could be used in mating to a degree.
Sure.
And then it became more effective to use just this claw. When they reproduce, reptiles, lepidosaurs, they have a hemipene, which means is a two-headed penis.
Mhm.
We
And
knew
it
that.
is- that too is nightmare fuel. That is something that cannot be unseen. But interestingly, and I think this is funny, this was a recent discovery. It's in the last 3 years, I think, and it was a team of female scientists who determined that snakes have dual clitori.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't know that.
There's the double slit, Pats. There's the double slit from the other way.
Oh, that's the double slit experiment. Got it. Thanks.
That's it. That's it. You know what I'm
Like, no, it's
fascinated?
not.
She knows all this stuff. You know what I'm fascinated with is the legless lizards. So I think there's a few species like that, and I think the only difference to actually know them different from snakes is the eyes will actually blink, right?
Yep.
And what else, Ives? Go ahead.
So the
She
eyes
knows
blink.
all-
They have open ears that aren't covered by skin
Yep.
like snakes. And also the tail to body ratio on snakes versus legless lizards is a lot different. So a snake
So
will have,
legless lizards like Ophisaurus will have a long tail, yes?
yeah, it's like half their body.
Yeah.
So that also is evolved. So if a predator grabs onto them, there's like a 50% chance they're just going to grab onto tail. And then with a snake, they just got a little tiny tail at the end of their body.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
snakes hear, but they hear more through their jaw.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Also, another difference I heard was legless lizards, they have the same scale pattern all around their body. They don't have the belly scutes the snakes have.
Okay.
They could
Because-
also, like,
The snakes need that for their method of locomotion. Their skeletons are entirely kinetic. They have muscle connections to every rib, so they can use their rib in a kind of a caterpillar fashion, but they use that in conjunction with their scales so that it becomes like a tank tread kind of a thing,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
which is
Wow.
why a snake will follow that pattern just like it's a train.
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit, like talking about snakes and how freaking cool they are, I get still like a little bit of that, like, look at the trees junk in my head, because like it's honestly amazing. Like it's so cool how all these things work. But then, and so I get how the initial reaction could be like, wow, God made such amazing things. But like also there's that flip side that we're talking about today, which is like, yeah, it's amazing, but also when we look at it and how it got to the amazing it is now, like that was a messy process.
Yeah.
Let's look at the dodo.
Millions and millions
The
of years.
dodo the dodo that was knocked into extinction, what is it, in the 1700s or thereabouts?
Yep.
On
Island of Mauritius.
Yeah. So the dodo was a pigeon.
Yep.
Strange thing that happens on islands when animals find themselves blown onto island or washed onto an island that they didn't mean to get stuck out at sea, but they managed to live long enough to, and then there are others that suffered the same fate. So they meet more. of their species and can reproduce and build little communities, they end up being very different on the island.
They get either really big or really small.
Exactly. So there have been elephants that end up in islands because elephants go out to swim, and there have been elephants found 5 miles out in sea.
Built-in snorkels.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, they can't do that indefinitely,
Yeah.
but they can't like sleep that way. They will end up in trouble, but it is possible for an elephant to end up on these far distant islands. And when they're stuck in an island and the food supply is not
That's
as great
amazing.
as it would be, you end up with dwarf elephants. Likewise, when you end up with lizards,
Cute.
a lizard can end up on the same island, and for various reasons, the better advantage for the lizard is to be bigger and bigger. So on one island, you will have dwarf people that are less than 4 feet tall, lizards that are 20 feet long, and elephants that are only 5 feet at the shoulder. Oh, and rats that are 5 times bigger than any rat.
God's perfect design.
Yeah.
I've seen them. We're in India.
So why did God start with the snakes again? Why did God start with snakes that still had hind legs, and then decide later that they didn't need the whole leg, they only need the claw, and then realize later with colubrids, you know what? They don't really need the claw either. They can get by without that. That's why the most modern snakes, the most derived snakes, don't have any semblance of their hind leg at all. Why is it that the old ones, the boas and the pythons, the henifids, they have 2 lungs and 2 carotid arteries, just like we do, but the colubrids only have 1. Oh, by the way, the henifids, the boas and pythons, one lung is longer than the other. So we have a gradation where there's favoring one lung while the other is getting reduced. Until we get the colubrids. They have only 1 lung and only 1 carotid artery. It's one of the things that they had to do in order to elongate, to make themselves skinnier.
Yes, they sure
None
are.
of this is intentional, unless you want to say that God is figuring out mistakes in his prior design. So why were the earliest
God doesn't make mistakes.
Why were the earliest snakes medstoid? Meaning they're not. Most snakes that we know today are macrostomata. Their bottom jaw is in 2 pieces connected by a cartilage, so they can stretch that bottom jaw out and swallow things bigger than their head. Yes?
That's another difference between snakes and legless lizards. Legless lizards, they have a jaw like ours, where there's not the little split in the middle.
Yes. So that the legless lizard will bite something into pieces and swallow it, where a snake can't.
Oh, yes. Okay.
They just swallow the whole thing.
So there was a wonderful fossil in India of a medstoid snake that had happened across a baby titanosaur, and it was in a clutch of titanosaur eggs. So this big ass snake, it's like 10-foot long snake, big fat snake like you would expect a python to be, gets in here and he's going to try to eat a baby titanosaur. Good luck. But the thing is that it doesn't have macrostomata. Its jaw is like a lizard's jaw, so it can only eat things that are the same size as its head, meaning the titanosaur might have been okay if it hadn't been that there was a sudden avalanche or mudslide or whatever and encased them right where they were.
Right.
So God is going through all of these different little minor tweaks. Sir Richard Owen, who was once upon a time, he was the one who invented the word dinosaur. He was the one who founded the British Museum, or the Museum of Natural History in London. And he was a sort of a creationist, but not a biblical literalist necessarily. He thought that God was a tinkerer who would learn from his past mistakes and come out with new and improved models in order to replace the old ones when they run down and get sluggish.
Oh, that would be very human of God.
So Richard Owen was determined to make dinosaurs out to be cold-blooded, slow-moving brutes, so that bears and cattle and stuff like that could look like the improvement. And people were coming to him at the time saying, we have a lot of evidence that these things were warm-blooded and that they were faster and better and stronger pound for pound than we are. And he just couldn't accept that. Yes, ma'am.
Why didn't God change human knees? They are absolutely terribly designed.
Mine are pretty fucked, and I'm only in my 40s. Yeah.
Yeah,
what
like
about
they start
feet?
to stop working less than halfway through our like maximum lifespan.
I mean, look at so he first created man, right? He already said, "Hey, I can do better than this shit," and then he created the woman. So you know.
I am kind of curious though to hear a minute from Ivy on this. Like, you're hearing all these interesting things that Aron is sharing. And you obviously are coming to this with some of your own ideas. So why do you think it's important for kids, especially youth, to like hear these things, to understand these things?
We should probably let the new generations of people think and like
critically
Well, now
figure things out for themselves.
That is not MAGA.
we want the new generations to not just be the exact same, because the exact same, as evidenced by the tweaks that God made, is not going to be the best.
It would
we should
seem
let kids think for themselves.
Well, what do we learn? What do we gain by kids knowing stuff about evolution and how this actually works?
When they're adults, they're not going to be stupid.
Well, okay. Can you be more specific?
Well, that doesn't work.
We want adults to
work
think.
for the powers that be. So the old men in charge right now do not want the younger generation to be smart.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want a younger generation who is competent and knowledgeable to take over the helm for them. They don't want you to take over the helm. They want to remain in power until they're dead and then fuck you.
I think you're exactly right.
They want kids to be stupid because then you're malleable, manipulable minions.
And a good consumer.
And yes, a good little fucking consumer. Exactly. They
Shut
will tell
up.
you what
turn your wheel, turn your gear, and buy our shit.
Yeah.
So that's why they have been purposefully undermining education for decades.
Yeah.
They're doing everything they can to sabotage public education, and now they want to get rid of it entirely.
Wait,
they want to have private schools that will teach you Jesus, because again, they don't want you to know shit.
Well, they're trying to dismantle the Department of Education, correct? And they can get things like the biblical teachings, the 10 Commandments. Get Bibles in schools.
10 Commandments, even though every Christian violates the 9th one.
I gotta think
oh gosh, do I know them? Is that the
No,
lie?
Is it the 4th or the 5th? I think it changes. In Exodus 20, it's different than in Exodus 34. Because the only time the Bible refers to the 10 Commandments as the 10 Commandments, it's in Exodus 34, and it's a different list.
Yes.
I've heard that before.
It's so inconsistent.
And not only...
I'm glad I didn't learn that.
Think about this one. Honor your father and your mother. That sounds really nice, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But the Bible says, honor thy father and thy mother, that you will live a long life. Why would you have to honor your father and your mother in order to live a long life? Because elsewhere in the Bible, in Exodus 21, I think it is, it says that your parents, if you dishonor them, they can kill you.
With stones.
For dishonoring them. So honor your father and their mother so that they don't kill you.
Wow.
And then...
How'd that feel, Pat?
That
Would
you
you want
live
to
a
this
long
lovely
life.
daughter of yours for making a mistake? For not honoring you?
Oh, it's Chuck Rocks at her head? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's not
Good
so
plan.
lovely.
Good plan.
How dare she dishonor you? God.
I don't even know what that
Imagine
would
killing your kid because they didn't clean up their room.
So let's talk about whales for a moment.
Yeah.
We have these
Sperm whale.
early species of whales, and they're not really good on the land, and they're not really good in the water. They're in this really awkward phase.
And they just gotta get past that.
They're pretty good as ambush predators because their bones are extra heavy, so they sink. They don't float.
Ooh.
So they can stand still on the bottom, and their eyes are right at the top of the head like crocodiles. So they can sit there with just their eyes and their nostrils sticking out of the water, just like a crocodilian would, and they watch. And when something gets too close, they lunge.
Really?
That's how they move. So this is your early whales, and then when they get as big as like Ambulocetus, they're pushing the maximum what you can do with the crocodile lineage. From then on, they're going to have to kind of branch out into brackish water and into salt water, and there's chemical studies in the skeletons of these whales that show when they adapted to salt water. So these animals are now able to drink salt water that they're swimming in.
Nice.
God modifying his previous designs somewhat, because all of these date chronologically, just like you would if you draw it on evolutionary picture, then do the radiometric dates on every one of them. Yep, they're in order.
Do you know, is there any Christian take from the Bible where they're trying to twist something to prove that God would do this, where it's like taking one species and then, slowly morphing it?
The argument is that's the way he wanted it.
Oh, so there's no like biblical thing that they've taken to say, see?
No rhyme or reason.
Oh my gosh.
So, Aron, when it comes to, because we discover new species all the time, what do creationists say about that? That we just legit have not found these species until recently? They just always were here. We just didn't discover them yet?
Or is God like actively inventing?
People have been finding fossils. Are you talking about live animals?
Yeah, we discover new species all the time.
Do you know when they discovered gorillas?
When? Oh God, was it more recent?
It was in the 18th century.
Oh,
how do you overlook gorillas?
So Christians will say like, "Oh, we are imperfect beings loved by a perfect God." Clearly he's not perfect.
Yeah, clearly not. I just wanted to say too that my husband is from South India, Aron, and he grew up on a fucking tiger reserve. You know how many tigers he's seen in his whole life? Maybe one, possibly two. And he lived on a reserve. So that just shows how elusive all these creatures can be.
Good point.
Wow, look at what is out there. And we don't see them all the time. The gorilla example is perfect.
One of my favorite photographs. I remember I was looking through a list of famous photos or noteworthy photos. And one of them, when you first look at it, is just a field of grass. And it's just a nice, serene kind of a setting, all these trees and all this grass. And the guy just thought it would look lovely. So he took a picture of it. And then as he was developing the picture, that's when he saw the tiger looking at him in the grass.
Imagine that, but with a creature that hasn't been discovered yet. And then they're like, oh, what? He's not.
Yeah.
So maybe look for it again.
There's some red, like it's a very bright red pit viper in India. There's only several of this species. Have you heard of it?
I don't know of a pit viper like that, but I know of two elapids like that, which interestingly have an overlapping range.
Okay.
They are not closely related, so their coloration is entirely convergent.
Mm-hmm.
But there is the red-headed crate and the Malaysian blue coral.
Okay.
They look almost exactly identical. They are a beautiful blue in the body, red tail, red head. And I think both of them have a sky blue racing stripe that runs down the mid of the body. Both of them. Both snakes colored the same way.
Cool. How cool.
But they are different. And while both of them will kill you, one will kill you worse.
Oh dear.
Because one of them has a neurotoxin like elapids commonly have.
Yep.
And that means that when you get bit, you may think you'll be fine. You may think you can walk that off. You can go for hours walking around and think you're okay, because a lot of people have. You get bit by the neurotoxin of some elapids, and it'll be hours later before you begin to feel symptoms and then die. But the Malaysian blue coral has some significant morphological and physiological differences. The morphological differences are that the venom glands are not just in the back of the head. They run, I think it is a quarter of their body length. So the amount of venom they can put into you is astounding. And then it's both a neurotoxin and a cytotoxin. And the cytotoxin is what's scary, which the other one doesn't have. The cytotoxin causes your entire body to go into massive convulsions extremely painful cramps everywhere. So while the neurotoxin will kill you in 10 hours, the cytotoxin will drop you down now.
Awesome. So what do you
That
think
sounds like
God
a
was
D&D
thinking
spell.
about when he created that?
Well, this will teach them to eat fruit.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it makes
Can we
Can we
so
talk
much
about that for a moment?
Yeah.
God set up this garden. In the garden, it says that in the middle of the garden, he put these 2 trees.
Yep.
Everybody forgets the other tree. And you'll understand why in a moment. But God put 2 trees in the middle of the garden. What's that?
So there's the tree of knowledge and the tree of immortality, I believe.
Exactly.
They only got to one.
Way
So
to know
it's a
your
choice.
Bible, Ives.
I
There's
watched
a
Singular
choice
YouTube
to
video
be
on it.
made. You can either eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or you can eat of the fruit of the tree of eternal life. Now, this, more than anything, paints that this is obviously a parable, a metaphor. This did not really happen. These are not trees that you can cut down and build a cabin. This is all metaphorical, all symbolic. And it's really sad that people try to make themselves believe something like this as being literal.
Yeah.
But God himself, in the end of Genesis 3, says now that they've eaten from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, he has to get them out of the garden, lest they reach out their hand and also eat from the fruit of the tree of eternal life, because then they will live forever.
Make a smoothie of both.
This is God in the Bible saying that man was not already immortal. Man would only
So what was he
become
planning to
immortal
do
if
when
he
they
ate that
died?
other fruit. So the question I love to ask Christians, and this really causes them to, it really causes them to brain bake. You should see what happens. When you talk to a fundamentalist Christian, a creationist, a biblical literalist, tell them, what if Adam never ate from either tree? What if he never ate anything at all? What would happen?
I think we would have stayed in the ant farm called the Garden of Eden.
No.
He
No?
would have died eventually.
He would have starved to death.
Oh.
Were these 2 trees the only food source that God gave Adam and Eve?
No, you can eat from any of the fruit. But what if Adam never ate from any? What if Adam never ate?
Yeah.
He would have died because he didn't eat from the fruit of the tree of eternal life. So he would not have eternal life. And all these people say, well, sin brought death into the world. No, they were created by God to eat.
To die.
They had to eat living cells in order to survive. He didn't give us the ability to make our own food like plants do. We have to ingest and digest living cells. Right. We are animals. We have an internal digestive tract. So this is our fate. We have to kill in order to live. Well, they only ate fruit. Well, you can't only eat fruit. But even if you did only eat fruit, you're still eating living cells.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens if Adam never ate? And then they realize, well, he would just live. No, because he didn't eat from the fruit of the tree of eternal life. God said he would only live forever if he ate from the fruit of the tree of eternal life, which means he didn't live forever. No, that's not what it means. Yeah, it is. No, it isn't.
Wow.
That is fascinating.
They're twisting the definitions so much.
When you tell somebody that when you look at Exodus 34, suddenly it's not honor thy father and thy mother anymore. Suddenly it's sacrifice your firstborn child on the altar to me. No one, you can redeem them with a sheep or a goat or whatever, but no one comes empty-handed. If you don't have something to redeem, that child is mine.
Shit got dark real fast.
Look at your daughter. Could you ever hold a knife over her?
Not following that.
Well, but you see, Jesus came later and changed a bunch of stuff.
Who has a sheep nowadays?
Well, it wouldn't matter to you because you're only a girl. You're only half price on the market.
Oh,
true.
It has to be the firstborn son. Yeah, the Bible says you can sell your daughter into slavery. And you don't have to wait till she's this old either. The Bible is very clear about that. Yeah.
What do you think? Is that moral?
Yeah. The Bible endorses.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't be living by that book. Yeah, just no.
Aron, I had a question. I
What's that?
saw a funny meme come through saying, like, okay, if God created women as like an afterthought, so apparently he was just going to create man and women. He's like, oh, he just decides to create women after that. Why did he create Adam with testicles and a dick?
I have to wonder why it is that
Why
he
did he
can
only make
do the
one?
genie blink and create everything out of nothing just because he used an incantation spell and says, "Let there be," which by the way, the Aramaic translation for "I create as I speak," what is the word? It's abracadabra.
When I wasn't allowed to say abracadabra when I was a kid because my parents thought that it meant open dead body.
Yeah, it's the actual pronunciation
Where
is
did they hear
something like
that?
abracadabra, something like that. But the modern translation, we replaced we put in B's in there for whatever reason. But yeah, that's the loose translation of the Aramaic "I create as I speak," abracadabra. That's where that comes from. So yeah, it's an incantation spell. God used an incantation, abracadabra, animals. But then for Adam, and this is interesting because the Talmud admits that Adam was created as a golem spell.
Yeah.
The word spell is in there. Ancient Semitic magic. So you fashion this thing. Now it can be made out of a number of different materials, and there's two, but you basically make a figurine, and it's usually clay. So the dust of the earth, you make a little figurine. And then you breathe into it the breath of life.
Ooh.
But you can also, if you're not God and can't breathe in the breath of life, you can also insert a written spell into the mouth of the thing, and that will enchant it too.
Okay, let's test the Bible real quick. Take a little mud blob and shove some paper in it.
Although I've taken that idea and I've been like, but actually, couldn't we twist real science to say that we human are, Nancy says we're sacks of shit. Like we're kind of like we're like dirt dolls animated by sunlight, right? Like the minerals and everything we're made up of. Like it's basically dirt, just arranged really nice. Yeah. And then like all of our energy is ultimately from the sun. I don't know. What do you think about that idea, Aron?
A Star Trek episode said that it had the aliens referring to us as ugly bags of mostly water.
Is that Q?
I mean,
you're not wrong.
Q that called us that? Sounds like
So,
a Q thing.
I like how creationists get angry that, I ain't no monkey. Like, yeah, you're a magically animated mud golem.
Yes.
Well, would you rather think you're a pile of
worse
mud?
than monkeys.
You are literally mud.
All right.
I wish I could remember. There were so many other fossil species, because we were talking about all the times that God fucked up, and you wanted specifically in biology. There are so many, like with placoderms, early fish, and previous to these early fish, there were fish that had no fins. They just have the tail, and so they've got no way of really controlling where they go. So they're just like crashing into things, I would imagine. But at some point, they end up with the tail flukes first, and the way that the tail flukes develop is just this one ridge and I think it started out on the bottom. This one ridge that starts out on the bottom, and then the tail begins to arc toward over the back of the back tip, and that's when it divides into two flukes.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you look at these fossil fish, you realize, well, that's where that came from. It's entirely incidental. This is unintentional. This is just an eventual incidental design that would come about on its own just from use.
Just glitches in the genetic code.
So at some point we end up with I wish I could remember the name of this type of fish, but there was one that developed a spike that comes off the back of the gill, and I don't know what the original purpose for this little spike was, but that spike then became a fin, which then had more and more complicated skeletal structure to it, until at some point you have a femur and a tibia and a fibula and a whole bunch of hand bones built into this flipper that still has ray fins to a degree.
Yeah.
But at some point the fins are now getting in the way. And because of the way genetics work and the Hox genes, it starts building a separate set. on the back end of the same thing, mirrored from what's on the front end.
Oh.
So, yes.
It's just random mutations, and whatever works stays because they don't die before reproducing. Pretty dang simple.
Statistically, yes. There are some things that were very well designed that issues took them out anyway. Like, there's no beating a comet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So
Well, that's
fair.
as far as we can do
dinosaurs
random.
are way more advanced than we are.
Right.
Not in intelligence, but pound for pound,
Not an intelligent.
any dinosaur is going to beat any mammal of the same size. Well, I can't say that because there's some that are purely herbivorous, and there's some that are mammals that are quite capable killers. But in general, pound for pound, same size. The mammal cannot go as far, as fast. They don't have the endurance. Dinosaurs had an avian respiration system. They had a way much more efficient means of processing oxygen, which is one of the things that enabled them to get magnanimously huge.
They can breathe better.
Exactly. So the only thing that can still do that is the one living type of dinosaurs we still have. That's birds.
Yeah.
And their ability to breathe like that is what enables them to fly.
Because they have a system where they have constant oxygen instead of it just being going in and out.
Breathe
and then
in,
there's a moment where we have no oxygen.
Yep. It's a continuous cycle.
That's
it
cool.
still comes out of the mouth. It still goes in the mouth and comes out of the mouth, but it's more a constant action. So kind of like turbocharging. Very much like that.
Turbocharged. I like that. Ivy, did you have any other examples you wanted to share of times that God
Ichthyosaurs. Can we talk about
ichthyosaurs.
ichthyosaurs for a second?
Let's talk about ichthyosaurs.
Okay, so the first ichthyosaur fossil ever found was this tiny little thing, vaguely lizard-like, and it was still capable of creeping around on land. It could probably rest on the land, but it wasn't completely stuck to the sea. Later, ichthyosaurs cannot get on land at all. So they have to sleep in the water, give birth in the water live, all of that. They're no longer laying eggs. That's gone. But the way that they developed, the earliest ones, just like lizards, just had little straight tails. Now they had flippers. Their hands are already useless as hands. They don't walk with them. So it's just like with sea turtles. They become flippers, right? All the bones for a hand are still in the flipper, but it's a flipper. It's not a hand. It's not a foot.
Right.
But it's the tail that became interesting because the fossils, when these fossils were found, and I love this, I wish I could show you the fossil that I'm thinking of right now, my favorite fossil ever. When they found fossils of ichthyosaurs in the 1800s, they knew that this is a reptile. Mm-hmm. So they equated it to a crocodile, and they made sculptures of it in Crystal Palace Park in England. Sir Richard Owen authorized these crocodile-looking ichthyosaurs. And then they found this other fossil where the animal died on its side, buried in such a way that you get to see the entire outline of what the animal looked like when it was alive. And one of the things they hadn't noticed in every one of these fossils that they'd found was the tail was always broken toward the end, broken downward. They never noticed that every tail was broken the same way. It wasn't broken. The tail dips down to become a fluke. The fin on the fluke then becomes a second fluke without a skeletal attachment. Just like the dorsal fin appears without a skeletal attachment. So this one fossil was my favorite fossil, and they found a few others since then. This is a fossil that when they looked at this, it had to tell them, you fucked all of this up. You were completely wrong. This is what happens when you try to make a dolphin out of a lizard.
Yes.
So it has top and bottom flukes. The bottom fluke has the tailbone going into it. And then it has a dorsal fin, just like a dolphin would have, just like a shark would have. And there's no bones for that. It's just there.
So that never fossilizes.
Usually. It has to be, and there have been 3 or 4 that have fossilized in this lithographic style where you can see the whole everything. And you can even say there was one that was fossilized where you can see, there was actually, I think, more than one, where it was fossilized mid-birth.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah. So the baby comes out tail first, which would be bad in air-breathing animals.
Oh
Would
no.
be bad in air-breathing animals. I mean, on land. But if you're underwater, that's the best way. You come out head first, and there's any problem at all, you're not making it to the surface in time.
Wow. Yeah. That doesn't seem like a very good design either.
The
Birth in general is kind of a rough design.
The dorsal fin.
So looking at the fossils of different types of ichthyosaurs down through the ages, you see the development from the shape of a lizard to the shape of a dolphin, incrementally, step by step. But I just have to wonder, why does God build things this way? The earliest mosasaurs were basically the same thing as monitor lizards.
Ooh, monitor lizards.
Yeah, they're the closest relative to mosasaurs is the monitor lizards.
Yeah.
So that
Our
would
local
mean,
pet store sells monitor lizards.
what
So
kind? I had a Malaysian water monitor, which I do not recommend. They are rich men's. I did not have the wherewithal to keep such a thing like this.
okay.
It got out of the containment that I had, and the police got it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh no. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. So anyway,
Aron, what do you think about all these? I guess it's either pythons or boas that are getting loose down in Florida, and there's because pet owners have been neglecting them, and they've been getting loose. Now all of a sudden, there's all these snakes
they've
in
been
the
letting
wild.
them go on purpose.
Really?
Yeah, like Burmese pythons. There's a giant wild population of Burmese pythons in Florida that are very much not supposed to be there.
Yep, that's why I
They-
will not bring I will bring my reticulated python to Minnesota only with permits provided by the state. I will not even attempt that to go into Florida.
So we know God's at least changing. So he must recognize some things up because he keeps like doing new iterations, right? Like that's how humans do it. So I guess that must be how God does it too. But
Just
like,
gonna act like God is planning evolution.
I wish I could remember the moment in the Bible where God apologizes to Moses. There was something that God screwed up, and he apologizes to Moses. But then later, God is going to kill Moses. So God shows up to kill Moses. And God is not this spiritual thing. God is a guy standing there because God is a guy standing there a lot of times in the Old Testament. There's that moment in Exodus where he allowed 72 of the elders to come look upon his physical form.
but only his back, right? Because they died.
There's different times where God waves his hand, turns his head, shows his backside, and cheats at wrestling. But he also eats and drinks and sits. Yeah, so he's a guy. Yes, ma'am.
So in Young Sheldon, this show, this like contradiction I heard brought up was like there's a one passage that's like no man hath seen God, and then there's also that
except Adam and God, what was it? What was his name? I forget his name. The guy that was picked, Elisha, the guy that was picked up in a whirlwind, basically sucked up by a tornado, where they said that he was taken to God.
Yes.
And then the 72 elders. And then there's somebody else too. I forget who else, but I mean, there's a number of people who have seen God. And yeah, the Bible contradicts itself. It contradicts itself a lot. When God fucked up, you remember when God thought the earth was flat?
Correct.
In Job 38, 39, 40, roundabout in there, God talks about how he keeps lightning bolts in storehouses to be used in times of war. And he does the same thing with snowballs.
Snowballs, really?
Those are human made.
He has snow in storehouses so that he can throw snow down. He stores it in snow houses.
Okay, if he can just go Avada Kedavra and make stuff, why is he storing it?
God says a lot of stupid shit in Job. What? And one of the dumbest things is when God says that the earth takes the shape of clay under a seal. Do you know what clay under a seal means? Back then, the way they would seal an envelope or seal a scroll, right, so that not everybody can read it.
A little disc.
They would put a little dab of clay on there that's sticky, and then they would have a special seal, and then the only way to produce this shape is if you have this seal. There is only one of them, so if I post this, it's just like my signature, right? So they would press that seal. So you've got a flat disc with a bit of topography in it, and that's it. That's, according to God, that's the shape of the earth.
Okay, how come you can go all the way around though?
The dome, Ivy, the dome.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's not like, so it's supposedly the sky is the dome.
the sky is a dome.
We're not
We're a disc, and then the dome is over
Yeah.
the disc.
We're not a snow globe.
But that's pretty much what the Bible describes. We're a
Because-
disc, where it's basically a table. It's a round tabletop set up on columns so that it does not move. And then you've got a map on top of it that's divided into 4 quadrants, north, south, east, and west. And sometimes this is mistranslated as corners. So when the Bible talks about the 4 corners of the earth, it means the 4 quadrants of the earth. And then you've got the solid crystalline dome, which and it doesn't say all of this in one place. You have to look for it in different places in the Bible where it starts talking about what is the firmament. The firmament looks like molten glass. It looks like it looks like crystal. It looks like it's been hammered out. Right. So when God stretches out the sky, this is what he's doing. He's either covering it with a cloth to make night, or he's pounding out the glass of the rakia to make the dome. And then the dome has windows in it to let the rain in, because above the firmament is water. They thought that outer space was full of water.
Wow, that's
The outer space. So is Earth just like we're we're like a snow globe in God's living room, that he monitors.
What's outside of God's living room?
That's what I've
Well, so I mean, Ivy, you are a kid who was not raised with these ideas.
And they sound so genuinely stupid when you say them out loud, when you don't have that pounded into your brain.
This is what I'm recognizing, that it's like
to
a
person who
no-brainer
is
for
not
you.
taught this sounds so stupid.
So what do you think?
You mean you don't readily believe that snakes can talk?
Yeah, fuck yeah.
I wish.
This is Harry Potter.
Well, okay, so what do you
now
think?
is your chance to thank your mother for never indoctrinating
thank
you
you.
into this shit
You're
like
welcome.
she was.
I asked a preacher one time on a podcast a very confrontational question: can snakes talk?
How
And
dare
I
you
got
ask
really
that?
embarrassed.
Then but God made them not able to talk when he took away their. That wasn't said in the Bible. Nothing in the
said-
Bible is saying that.
If you believe that there's a God who can do anything, then you believe that a snake can talk, which is an admission that reason goes right out the fucking window.
Yeah.
There you
And
go.
also the thing about, like, after Eve and Adam ate the fruit of knowledge, that didn't they also get the penalty of pain during childbirth or whatever?
Yeah, because God lied. God lied and said, on that day that you eat of it, you will surely die. And then the serpent comes up and says, you will not surely die. For God knows that when you eat of this, your eyes will be opened. And
The
now,
serpent's
remember,
telling
the
the
serpent
truth.
was supposed to, he's cast as the Lord of lies, right?
Exactly. Serpent.
But
was
he's the character who told the truth.
Mhm.
Yeah,
In the very next line, what does it say? They ate of it and their eyes were opened. The serpent was right. They did not die on that day. They lived 1,000 years after that. Yes?
So in this, like, adaptation of the Bible called Hazbin Hotel, so it's saying that Lucifer, which is
Show
different.
she likes.
Yes, it's a different character than Satan in the Helliverse. So Satan turned into a snake to do that, apparently, but in that it didn't have legs. And theoretically in that, Lucifer was the snake.
Oh yeah, that's the story Christians tell.
And
Yeah,
also,
let me warn you. Let me warn you about that. What Christians are going to tell you. They're going to tell you that the serpent was Satan, even though the Bible doesn't allow for that.
no, it was Lucifer.
Well, yeah, what was Lucifer? Lucifer was the light bringer. That was the original name given for Jesus. In the 4th century, one of the first Christian denominations were the Luciferians, who
Mhm.
worshipped Jesus as the light bringer.
Isn't morning star applied to Lucifer also? And
That
that's
was
also
Isaiah
called...
was not talking about Satan. He was making fun of Babylonian astrology. So
Oh.
he was talking about the planet Venus.
Yeah, okay.
So Venus was the morning star, the light bringer, and it was son of the dawn. And the dawn and the dusk were Shahar and Shalim. So Halel ben Shahar was Lucifer, and then El is the sun, because of course it's a sun god. And so when you read all of this, the way that Isaiah is talking about, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the dawn? It's not Satan. He's making fun. He's talking about Venus the way that it was interpreted by Babylonians.
Wow.
But what Christians will tell you is that the Bible says that the serpent was Satan. No, it doesn't. The Bible doesn't even allow that it could have been, because the serpent was cursed to crawl in his belly all the rest of his days. The first time you hear about Satan by name is in Job, which is chronologically after that. God, who knows everything, doesn't know where Satan came from. And so he says, hey, where have you been? And Satan says, I've been walking up and down the world. Walking. Says the word walking. And then you'll say, well, that the
I would
Christians
love
will say,
to
well,
argue
yeah,
with
but
a
if
Christian.
you look, if
Wow.
it had to be that the serpent in the first part of the first book of this Bible had to be the Satan, because the last book of this Bible says that Satan is that old serpent. Yeah, it's that old 7-headed serpent, which I think would have been mentioned in Genesis.
Yeah.
It's the 7-headed serpent who is standing, because serpents back then had legs, according to the mythology.
Where would the legs be going, according to the Christians? Before it got
The
like,
serpent
would
in
it be
Revelation has 7
on
heads and it's
either
standing
end,
on the
it's
beach.
like a wiener dog.
But then if you jump back
Like
to
a
the
wiener
middle,
dog.
Jesus tells the Pharisees that they are the sons of Satan and that they are a den of vipers. Does that mean that Jesus is saying that they are snakes?
Right.
He is saying that they are snakes, but he's saying it metaphorically. Jesus does not mean that they are actually serpents, nor does he mean that they are the sons of Satan, nor does he mean that he is the Son of God.
It's
He
like
absolutely does not mean that he is God. Jesus never claimed to be God.
Right.
Christians will tell you all day that he did. Well, he says before your father was born, yeah, I know. Yeah, but that's a different translation. And when you go from the Hebrew to the Greek, it doesn't really work that way.
Christians are so brainwashed, and it's like just
Yes.
someone at the start of that had to have known they were lying. You know?
Yeah,
someone
they were.
had to have started Christianity maliciously for it to exist in its current
It's a
form.
tool for control and manipulation. Absolutely.
All of this talk, like, I feel like if you had been an indoctrinated child, you would now be in a place of like, oh, what the crap? Everything I was taught was bull crap.
Imagine.
What do you think about the fact that you're growing up in a country where there are lots and lots and lots of kids who have been taught this fairy tale as though it's true? And like, what are your thoughts on that, and like growing up into a world that will be filled with those adults?
I mean, they're just going to be so much more easily manipulatable because they already believe one lie. So if you just like kind of build on it a little bit, then
right, exactly. And you keep getting apologetics for all of those lies too.
What species is that snake?
Elapha shrinkii. This is a Russian rat snake.
Oh, cool.
From Siberia.
Oh,
beautiful.
Wow, Siberia. That's not the place I think of snakes.
I think, yeah, they had that at Snake Discovery too.
Did they?
Aron, do you have a false cover at all?
Ivy, if I'm gonna endorse one of my own videos. If I did a 3-part playlist, the first 2 parts will be interesting to you. They are called Ophidia. Yeah, I think it's Ophidia, but it's a playlist on the evolution of snakes.
Oh, cool.
The first episode is how they evolved to become snakes, and then how they diversified as snakes.
Hi, Popcorn. Oh, you cutie. Oh.
I love corn snakes. They're so pretty.
They're so pretty. And she is a butter morph. So I couldn't help it.
Stuck on her lip.
But of course, I had to name her Popcorn once I thought of it, even though it's the most gimme name ever.
Patty.
Buttermorph corn snake, Popcorn.
Aw.
See if I can get her more in frame here.
Oh,
I have an albino lavender reticulated python
Oh,
that I'm
cool.
tempted to go get right now.
Aron, do you have a false cobra? I like cobras.
Look at my most recent short on my channel.
You do have one? Ooh,
Yes.
Okay.
I have
okay.
a Brazilian false water cobra.
I think
So
they're
cool.
cute.
They are. They are
Cobras.
magnificent pets. They're intelligent. They're not aggressive. They're big, and they're sweet. Mine is not at all afraid of me. She gets handled a lot.
Yeah.
Every 2 weeks or so, I will take her to another beer garden or brewery or outdoor dining restaurant, something like that, and she will get to meet people and cruise around.
I wonder how she
The
sees
false
me.
cobras are not venomous by any means, correct?
Yes, they are.
They are. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought they were not.
But it's
They're
like
rear fanged, right?
they're rear-fanged colubrids, so it's going to
And
the
they
venom
eat
is going
like
to be
frogs and stuff.
it's going to be like the venom of a hognose,
Mhm.
but a whole lot more of it.
Yeah. Conversion evolution.
Well, they're in the same family. They're Dipsatinae. So the false water cobras and the hognose snakes are in the same. But Dipsatinae fairly is a massive family. That's another thing people don't understand. They think that maybe the most that they will know is that there's vipers and elapids and colubrids and pythons and boas, the Haenophiids, right? That's the most that they would
There's
know.
something stuck on her mouth.
Yeah.
But the family Dipsatinae that has 14 different species of hognose snakes,
Yep.
and the false water cobra also has like 90 other species within that same family.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So.
Wow.
Ivy, it's been fun meeting you. I love that you have a herpetological mind, and thank your mother for not poisoning your brain.
Thank you.
See?
My mother steeped me in all kinds of religious nonsense and that prepper end times kind of crap when I was a kid, so that I was led to believe that Road Warrior was my future.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So, Aron, what do you see as so important about kids getting to understand things in the way that they are real instead of in the fantasy of the Bible?
The old people that are in control now are
Mhm.
determined to destroy everything possible to make a better profit in the next fiscal quarter.
Ha! Thank
They
you.
will, and they have bills on the docket to harvest every living thing and all other natural resources in the entire Gulf of America.
Mm-hmm.
They want to strip mine the planet. They don't want there to be anything left for anybody. They don't want they don't care about future generations. They want to exploit all the oil.
Mars sounds
Bracket.
nice, right?
They want to take all of the resources that ever existed that might have been of use to future generations. Fuck the future generations. We're going to take it all now, destroy it all now, burn it up now, and then we can use the excuse that Jesus will be back any minute to roast the planet anyway to save us from our own irresponsibility.
So you're saying land grab on a worldwide spectrum here?
Well, at least the national level.
So, are you saying that our planet is being directly destroyed by the Christian ideology?
Can I hold
Deliberately and with full intent of malice.
Okay. What do you think about that and your future on this planet?
Yeah, it's kind of gonna suck.
The sad thing is, this is not hyperbole. They will admit it.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Can I hold popcorn?
These are bills you can look up.
Oh, they're fucking proud of it.
Yep.
They're like,
They've been
yeah.
working hard for it because isn't there some belief that if they enact these things, they will bring about the return of their deity Jesus?
They can justify it more that way.
Right, or they
Yeah,
say that that's why they
totally.
think they're doing it.
Wouldn't Jesus
One of
be
the
a
things that
god,
some believers
technically?
will do to strengthen their faith is to put themselves into such a desperate situation that if they're wrong, they're doomed, so that they will force them to believe.
Oh no.
Yeah. So this is what a lot of those people are doing. In 2011, May 21st, 2011, Harold Camping said that the world was going to end at 6 p.m. Eastern time. That the world was basically going to split in half. And people who listen to him are so fucking stupid because they've been programmed to be gullible rubes. Yeah. They've been programmed all their life. Don't listen to facts. Don't evaluate anything. Don't test anything. Believe what we told you to just because we told you to. So they did. And one guy spent his entire fortune on billboards warning everybody that the end of the world was coming.
Oh, dear.
The end is near.
So there he was, 65 years old, in Times Square, waiting for the end of the world. And he's looking at his watch at 6:05. And he is now impoverished. All his money's gone. And there's a huge crowd of people laughing hysterically at him. He got off light compared to some of other Harold Camping followers. One woman to save them from Satan.
Okay, I feel like if something makes people do that, maybe we shouldn't be believing things that make people do that.
But stuff like that does happen, actually, more often than we think.
Yeah, so religion is really good at hiding mental illness.
Yes.
I'm not going to say that it causes mental illness, but it is hiding.
It was probably started by someone with like some kind of mental illness.
It's certainly
you hear voices, don't you? Yeah.
The way that like people with schizophrenia will be like, God is talking to me with the voices.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's concerning.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Aron, I appreciate so much that you were willing to come on and talk about this topic with us and reiterate why this matters so much for the next generation to know true things.
If you want to have another generation after the next generation, yeah.
Yeah, right? Well, Aron, do you want to tell all of our listeners if by some weird chance they know us but don't know you, how they might find you?
I'm patreon.com/ARONRA. This is what I do for a living, have done for a decade or so. I live in a country where tens of thousands of people have recently lost their jobs because they voted for eggs to be affordable, and eggs are now out of reach.
Yep.
So they voted for a criminally corrupt, incompetent incontinent who told them that he was going to destroy the government and override the Constitution, and they voted for him anyway. Because what are the options? Then you might have a black woman in charge.
Oh,
yeah.
Geez.
Yeah, so vote for the orange monkey instead.
We should talk politics sometime too, man.
The rotting orange.
Yes.
All right, so the financial situation for a lot of my donors now has become compromised. So, I mean, since I live off of donations, I mean, this is the only thing I can do is plead for other people. If you want to support what I do, I don't just do educational stuff. I also do a lot of activism. I have held so many picket signs, and I've testified to the State House and to the Board of Education, and I've done rallies and a bunch of political rallies and such. I've lobbied. I've done all of that, and I would like to continue doing that and not have to get a regular job, which will not allow me to do anything useful on a larger scale.
Right.
If I were forced to do that. So please donate if you can.
Yep. Links in the description, everybody. Go support Aron Ra. Appreciate you so much, sir.
Yep. Good to meet you,
Aron. It's wonderful. We'll talk soon. We appreciate your knowledge on everything. Go check out Aron Ra, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, Aron. Thank you.
Bye.